Okay, we're ready. We're all mic'd up. So thanks for getting down here so early. Yeah, so we're going to talk about food and drink and catering at festivals and events. Because I think what's interesting about all this kind of world is all the little micro changes that actually make the big difference. It's not the big statements from Trump types. It's all the grassroots work that makes the big difference. So what I'll do first, I'll get the people on the panel to introduce themselves and say actually what you do to start over there, Bonnie.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Bonnie May and I'm the CEO of the Global Infusion Group. Probably most people here today in the room will know us as Eat to the Beat Catering. We just literally a week or so ago celebrated our 41st birthday, and probably most sort of renowned for our catering in sort of the music business, bands on tour, and backstage and production catering for artists, crew, their entourage, and the workforce.
My name's Adam Hempenstall, co-founder of Peppermint Bars and Events. We're a food and drink specialist, predominantly specialising in the music festival world, but we also look after venues, sports events and stadiums and so forth. Been around for 21 years, so not quite as long as Eat to the Beat, but yeah, really great to be here.
Thank you. Dale?
Yeah, my name is Dale Vince, and I'm the founder of a company called Ecotricity, world's first green energy company about 30 years ago this year, I think. I run a vegan football club, Forest Green Rovers, and a little venture called Devil's Kitchen that makes predominantly plant-based school dinners for kids. And I do some other stuff as well, but that'll do it.
Hello, I'm Tobias Azizah. I work for Meta, handling food service, food-based perks inside our international offices across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I'm on the board for the Vegetarian Society, handling some of the governance for the national charity, advocating for vegetarian or vegan-forward diets. And that's me.
Brilliant. So Bonnie, so you've been 41 years. That's quite a long time, and you've seen a lot of changes in what you do. So what kind of changes have there been, and how much is the sustainability thing affecting what you do, and how much are you proactive in making those changes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming clearly over that period of time. You know, catering, I guess if we take on tour and sort of those live events as an example, has changed a huge amount from not having any catering on, at all, and then being a somewhat of a luxury item to go out on the road. I think from a band point of view, to have catering was absolutely part and parcel of we've made it to be able to actually tour with the luxury of having food and drink on the road with them. And I think we've seen the sort of the rise of the crazy dressing rooms, and probably when it all became quite extravagant. The more money a band would have or a production would have, the more extravagant the food and drink would go with it. And I think then after we saw the stop of us all buying music and streaming music, I think a lot of the productions and bands have then realised that actually all that funding would actually coming out from themselves. So we saw a much more of a belt tightening piece here in terms of what was offered and what people were prepared to pay for. And I think as time has gone on, I think people are just far more aware that, I think for us from a sustainability point, it's the waste part of what we see day in, day out on those large productions, I think is probably one of the most paramount things that we feel that we need to address. And certainly in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, I think the rest of the world has actually realised it is something we can do something about. So yes, we as proactive as we're able to be, we are, excuse the pun, at the end of the food chain very often in terms of a production, and we're very much under the sort of the cloche in terms of what that production and what the ethos of that event or that band is all about. We do have our own, sustainable pieces that we try and take forward on all the events that we do and be as proactive as we possibly can.
Have you seen people's riders change? Would you say 40 years ago it would be, like I said before, the fall of Rome, like 8,000 bunches of grapes, keep them going, to now where people actually detail it down to one banana, one piece of bread, something like that.
Yeah, I think we've absolutely, we have seen them change over the last sort of, the 40 years, and we've seen the craziest of, dressing room riders, and I think absolutely now people are far more aware of their environment and the budget that goes with it as well. So we don't quite see, to the nth degree, in terms of what people's requests are, but we've definitely seen a pullback in terms of what is, put out and very often left behind, which is a really good thing. And one of the things that we've sort of discussed in the office is actually we'd like to take forwards, for this year and for the summer, is actually putting an offer of sustainable swaps in. So when we do get a dressing room rider through, or drinks requests or food requests, that absolutely from a client perspective, you can have at the end of the day as the client exactly what you want. And I think one of the most important things is not putting a price point on this. So for no additional cost, would you consider having some of these more sustainable items, more local items that we can swap out? Or even if we could do half of it, just to give people the option to take some of this up.
And for you, the learning curve for you and your business and sustainability, how did that start and how did you get interested and how do you kind of sustain that interest as well?
I think it's something, certainly from the team in the office, and from myself and Mary who had this up, it's really important to us too. It's a really important journey that we need to do something about it now if we want to have a future that's going to be reflective of our thoughts in 10 years' time. So, being part of it is something which is absolutely inherent to what we do. We want it to be part of the fabric of the business and not like a bolt-on extra. Mm-hmm. So, we have a team that are really embraced in this as well.
So, Adam, you're in a similar field, but sort of like the other side of the counter in a sense, aren't you?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. So, we've obviously seen a lot of change over the years. I think when we came to the market in 2003, certainly as far as the bar offering and even the food was very low. There was not much choice. The food was very much what we called cream and green burger vans and not much else. And that's obviously developed and improved a huge amount over the past 20 years. And the expectation of street food in a live festival environment, even into stadiums and so forth, is almost an expectation now in terms of the fan experience. But I think what we've noticed over the past 5 to 8 years is a huge drive towards, particularly in the younger generations, a drive towards wellness and a drive towards understanding the provenance of product. And I guess unlike my generation where we used to go to a concert and kind of not remember much about it the following day, I think there's a much more of a drive to be in the moment, to really be enjoying and getting the most value out of that experience, and enjoying sort of low alcohol beers and really looking at, I think we're getting a lot of questions around the provenance and sourcing of the products that we use. We always have to balance up, ultimately, if we have a sponsor at a show versus the products that we want to serve, and it is about trying to get that balance. But ultimately, I think for us, it would be great to be able to get more information, particularly from the drinks companies, in terms of how they produce their product, the carbon footprint, and ultimately how it's produced, so that customers can make an informed choice.
The big drink companies won't do that. The smaller companies do generally. But
yeah, I mean, yes. Generally speaking, there are a lot of independent breweries and a lot of independent drinks businesses that are producing information and being more transparent about the carbon footprint of their process. And I think that we're really keen to ensure that happens with the big drinks businesses as well. I think that there is probably a bit of concern from them at the moment in terms of, if we come out and say this, does somebody else come and undercut us and say something different? But I think that we would love to be able to get to a point where we can ultimately produce information on our menus in a similar way that we can do with food. So we run all the street food, put all the street food into Hyde Park Winter Wonderland, just literally across the road, and every single trader uploads their information and their carbon footprint is produced on the menu so that the customers can make an informed choice. Why can't we do that with drinks? And that's a real thing that we're trying to push for at the moment.
Oh, so the drink industry is a bit more conservative?
Very much so, yeah.
They got more to lose, more to hide.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I think there definitely, there is some hope in the distance. I think they're certainly coming forward with a bit more information. It only takes one of them really to come forward and say, hey, look, here is all of our information. Do with it what you will, and then that kind of really opens up everyone else to do the same. But until we get past that threshold, it's very difficult to get them to do that. But as I say, independent drinks businesses, the likes of Small Beer that we work with in London, there's Purity and so forth. They've got some great sustainable brewing processes using carbon recapture and using less water in the brewing process. But it's not always practical to be using these smaller suppliers. at big events, because sometimes you've got to roll in with 30 trucks full of the product, and it could take them years to brew it. So that's the challenge that we have, and that's really the balance that we're trying to.
With the audience at big events, is there an interest in smaller independent breweries and foods?
Hugely so, yes, absolutely. And we always took we traditionally have taken the view that, well, if you're at a concert, then the diet goes out the window, or the sort of the concern for the environment goes out the window. Absolutely not. We're really seeing people, when they've been given the choice to be able to choose something that's maybe locally produced, or has got a lower carbon footprint, or is better for them, or they understand the provenance and the origin of the product. We're seeing people really drive into that, and we've actually A/B tested bars in music festivals, and actually just offered low and no products off certain bars, and we've seen a huge uptake in the last few years, and obviously the stats that around sort of low and no products are huge at the moment, and the industry is in huge growth. What does that mean for sustainability? Well, ultimately, brewing and distilling, creates a lot of carbon and is quite carbon intensive. So the lower ABV and the sort of the more healthy the product can be, then ultimately the better the product can be for the environment.
I mean, for you, is this a journey driven by the audience, or driven by you, or is it just a joint?
Yeah, look, I think it's a bit of both. I think we're seeing, particularly in the younger generations, many more questions being asked of it. Even just people coming up to the bar and asking about the products. Do you have this product? Do you have a gluten-free beer option? Where is this product from? Are there any local alternatives? But also as well, working with our clients and partners. I saw Sam from AG is here, and it's great to see the bigger businesses that run high-profile events really coming on board with that. They're listening to their audience, and they're really sensitive to the fact that people are asking and demanding of that. And those conversations are being fed into partnership conversations to ensure that the customer can have that choice. So of course, if the partner is a Asahi or a Heineken, then yes, of course, that's the lead product. But it's important to be able to have carve-out so that people can have a choice, and whether that's sourcing a beer from 2 miles down the road, or sourcing a wine from a UK-based wine company, then I think that's really where people are pushing and driving towards.
So what would you say the main thing is? Is it actually the radius or where the product comes from to the event, or is it actually what's in the product, or is it both?
I think it's more of the latter, if I'm honest with you. I think it's about understanding the ingredients, how the product is produced. I think much more of a drive towards more organically produced products. I think fundamentally, Gen Alpha are really coming through with lots of questions about how things are produced, where they're produced. Are these products good for me? Are they organic? Are they natural? You're seeing a huge range in sort of premium soft drinks coming through with lion's mane and milk thistle and lots of, and there's huge growth in these markets, and that's there for a very good reason, and it's to service a very, very growing market ultimately. And look, yes, people say to us, "Oh, God, a lot of people are drinking less nowadays. Surely that's a big threat to your business." We actually see it as a huge opportunity. I think particularly in the premium soft drinks market, where people might not be drinking or drinking a lot less, but there are huge amounts of soft drinks and alternatives that can be offered.
Well, I suppose they are drinking less. They're not drinking 10 pints, but they're just drinking different drinks.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And we just want to be in a position where, if you're a non-drinker, or you're not drinking for religious reasons, or for whatever reason, that you don't feel like a third-class citizen when you're going to the bar ordering your lemonade. You want to be able to feel inclusive, and we want to be able to have low and no alcohol products available where alcohol products are as well. So you don't feel like you have to go to a separate area or what have you. So
Dale, you've been doing a lot of work in this field. I suppose we could start talking about the Mass Attack gig, the one went to Liverpool in December, because a lot of these ideas were incorporated into that gig, weren't they? Especially the food and the drink. So what kind of ideas were they using at that gig, and what were you bringing into that?
For me, the kind of fundamental approach is about energy, transport, and food. They're the three things that drive unsustainability in our world. They're responsible for 80% of our carbon footprint as individuals, as organizations, as entire countries. It's a very good universal slide rule. And we all make decisions every day in those three areas of life. It's about how we power our homes, how we travel, and what we eat. And we can see those same principles applied to a live event. And so those are really at the heart of Act 1.5. And were applied to the gig on the Downs. I think the news out today, there's a report out today saying it was broke a world record for low carbonness, the gig on the Downs. And we followed the same blueprint in Liverpool as well. And of course, I've already followed that blueprint of Forest Green Rovers as well. And I would say in that respect, took on what you might, I think stereotypically would say, the most difficult audience imaginable to take sustainability to, not just on the food front, but on every front, which is football fans. Mm-hmm. And actually, created a green football club, vegan as well. And, we're talking about 15 years ago now. And what we found is that through the medium of sport, and the same is true in the live sector as well, which is why I'm involved in it, it's a platform to reach people. So people came to our football club. Yes, they were skeptical to begin with, but if you fast forward to today, our fans have gone veggie and vegan. They're buying electric cars and solar panels, and they're talking to me about it and to other people about it. And other football clubs are coming to us, and instead of having a slightly kind of raised eyebrow or mocking tone, they're coming and telling us what they're doing about their solar panels, their electric car chargers and stuff like that. So the world changed very much in that 10 to 15 years. And for me, it's very exciting. I went to festivals as a kid, and I know that can change your life. Gigs and festivals can change your life, give you a different outlook. And it's a great opportunity to reach people and talk to them about how they live and to show them how they can live in a better way.
In a sense, it's a platform. I'm normalising sort of ideas that have been looked on as being a bit out there, making them become normal. Is that part of the process?
I think it is part of the process, and I think that's part of like the evolution of our lives and our societies. Sometimes things that are outlandish one day, 10, 20, sometimes it may take 40 years. I've been vegan nearly 40 years, and back when I said I didn't want to eat animals, it was like actually people were quite aggressive. I know it can happen these days as well, but it was like being from another planet because it was so against the norm. So yeah, that happens, and now I would say plant-based food is quite normal at events, at football clubs. Chelsea have a dedicated plant-based food outlet, for example, in the Premier League. We've seen Premier League clubs get on board the green agenda. Massive Attack are leading the way, I think, in the live music sector, and it takes these examples to show other people, other event promoters, other bands, other football clubs, sports clubs as well. The UN have got involved. They've created a Sport for Climate Action program and recruited all of the sport bodies in the world, actually, to the same end, which is to reach the billions of sports fans on the planet and make them fans of the environment.
I mean, with the Massive Attack gig, because I guess it's more of a music-orientated event, but what things are going there with the food and drink, because this is the food and drink panel? So what sort of things were you bringing into that? What sort of ideas? What worked and what didn't work and what needs to work?
The thing is, plant-based food these days is not difficult to come by. And a lot of the issues were just psychological. The people behind the gig, let's say, I don't know exactly the terms for them, but the people that were organising the gig were a little bit sceptical, like, maybe people won't want to eat the food if they come here, and it's only plant-based. Well, I'd heard that before, in 2010 at Forest Green Rovers, knew that wasn't true. And for the caterers as well, the traders themselves, some of them were more on board than others, but to actually get plant-based options is really easy. We all know that, right? They're everywhere. Supermarkets are full of them. So it's never been easier, actually, to do a thing like that. So all the catering was plant-based. I think I'm not sure about the drink. I think the drink was vegan as well, and we had no generators on the day. That was a really big thing. It was all battery powered, so there were no fumes, there was no noise, energy transport and food. They laid on electric buses as well and stuff like that. But look, the food queues were incredible. They went from one side of the arena to the other. So far from being an unpopular choice, it was super popular, just incredible.
So that'd be interesting.
And I just want to say, Forest Green Rovers as well, our experience there, people said to me, you'll kill the football club, nobody will come, and if they do come, they won't eat food. And today, our crowd is 4 times bigger, and our food sales are 10 times higher.
That's what I know about the Massive Attack gig. Do people, I might not have the stat, do people actually eat more food that night than normal?
I'll
have 2 of those.
That's right. There's a lot of really great stuff to try.
Yeah.
And it became about food. Food became, I don't know, kind of like an exploration for people. I think a lot of people came there knowing what they were, coming into, because vegan food, plant-based food, it's not a cranky thing anymore.
So with that gig, you said about Forest Green and people like Chelsea taking parts of that model. Is the Massive Attack gig actually influenced other gigs and other promoters, or are we still in very early days with this?
Yeah, I think it is having an influence for sure. And also, I'm part of a thing called Grid Fairies, along with Claire, and taking diesel out of festivals is definitely having an impact. Other promoters and bands actually approaching us and festivals to say, how can we do this? So I think on all the fronts, and this is how the world works. People see other people doing something for the first time, see them getting plaudits for it, and appreciation from customers, audiences as well, and stuff like that. And they think, well, maybe I should look at that.
And also, I think, is it a business model as well? It's actually a way of making money and a way of not wasting money as well. And this is not a luxury thing, is it?
It shouldn't be. So plant-based food shouldn't be more expensive. It should be cheaper. Mm-hmm. But it is premium priced in supermarkets. That's one of the things I'd quite like to change, because it ought to be an economic choice. In the same way that green energy has become an economic choice in our country today. It's no longer about ice caps and polar bears, the conversion to 100% green energy. It's about jobs and GDP and lower energy bills. And that's a very persuasive argument for people.
I think fundamentally that's the argument that'll win the whole, especially the current climate. Even though it's like the wrong reason to get the right result.
That's right. Who cares? It's like there are three reasons to be vegan, right? One is for the animals. The animal farming industry is absurdly cruel. Another is for human health, because animal diets are driving all of the chronic diseases that affect us later in life. And the third is for wildlife. Actually, there's four. The third is for wildlife, because we're taking all of the land from wildlife to grow plants to feed animals in this incredibly inefficient system to feed ourselves with animals. And of course, animal agriculture is also one of the biggest global drivers of the climate crisis. But I don't care which reason you choose, right? Who cares?
Yeah, as long as we get to somewhere towards the end point.
Yep.
Yeah. And a lot of these ideas are in your work as well. I mean, what you're doing with Meta and people like that, and taking stuff into those kind of spaces and those office spaces. Plus also, if you talk about the work of the vegetarian side.
Yeah, for sure. So my experience is more in food service, contract catering, and in that cycle of I guess complementary food service and perks. But what we do see is a lot of what's been said already. I mean, involving sustainability into our work has been at times challenging. Part of the reason is that there's less friction, especially when people are used to an abundance of choice and come from many different nationalities. But we're in a position where, because it is complementary, we are kind of pushing a specific narrative, fiddling the numbers, and really looking at our menu engineering to see how we can adopt more of a carbon-friendly menu. So we will do things like have a certain percentage of meats, premium meats mixed with more plant-based proteins to create things that are more mince-based or sausage-based, etc. We look at specific menu profiles to see if we can lower our red meat consumption, lower our dairy, etc. I think the big part in our offices is around dietary inclusion and making sure that not only can we make things vegan, vegetarian friendly and less carbon intense, but we can actually adhere to a lot of the, or reduce a lot of the risk around top 14 allergens, religious diets, speciality diets, all the weird and wonderful intolerances that people have as well. A lot of the work also involves the internal event side as well. So we facilitate events inside our offices, and we notice that there is a very different profile there. A lot of our food waste ends up coming from events, as what was mentioned a little bit earlier, as opposed to the efficiencies we've driven in our main catering and between meal sector. So it's been a journey. There, I think the event profile, a lot more work has to be done in terms of understanding the audience and making sure you're catering to that audience. There's different demographics that eat different ways, whether they're from different socioeconomic backgrounds, genders, races, etc. And the event type as well. Is it a standing event, a seated event? What type of catering are you providing? Is it convenient? And that kind of goes back to the premise of the day job and the cafes and the between meal services, because it is all built around convenience when it's in a corporate setting. It's about how people can get nourished, get hydrated, and go back to do their day job and get a bit of a wow in the middle of that. So convenience has been, balancing convenience and sustainability has been part of the biggest challenge there.
So for you, it's like baby steps, just trying to bring the audience with you. I mean, if it is, do you sometimes wish you could speed it up a little bit?
Well, we do. I mean, it is baby steps. So we have been able to be bold in many ways. We've, you know, as it was many years ago, the kind of Meatless Monday narrative, we had done that. We have, but we found that where we're more overt with our approach, that's where a lot of the pushback is. There's so much subtle things that we can do, subtle ingredient swaps, things that can make dishes more inclusive, but also make dishes more sustainable. I think people don't really want to be told what to eat. They don't want to be boxed in. Sometimes the labels are the problem. But making sure we can still provide and put the science into our menus ultimately ends up with the same result. But it is baby steps, but at times we do take bold steps, and we're privileged enough to be able to do that. The work with the Vegetarian Society is more around governance and really pushing a plant-forward diet, making sure people that are trying to follow a vegetarian or vegan diet understand what is vegetarian and vegan or plant-based, making sure that we can push or potentially lobby for more of that, more of the benefits, and really educating consumers, because a lot of the barriers are with education.
So if it's not a case, like you say, it's not a case of hectoring people, telling people, but it's about a case of providing options and information?
It's optionality and information, yes, 100%. I think that in the aspects of convenience, we've adopted an approach where it would rather make 80% of people happy, at the same time allowing for everyone to be able to be accommodated. So that goes to the dietary balance of things, but also falls into the sustainable aspect as well. Yeah.
So Bonnie, this is this same situation you have as well. How do you bring everybody with you? And so if you talk about that, and also the problems, and what kind of solutions would you need for what you're trying to do?
I mean, it's difficult. I think it's really fair to say in the world that we work in, it is very, very difficult. You know, we're kind of, you know, we're sort of setting up shop, particularly in our, you know, from our point of view, for a day or a week for such a short amount of time, you know, only. So some of the things that we try really hard to address is the wastage part of everything. That's a really tricky piece, you know, when we're mobilising for such a short amount of time. And I think all of our sort of attitudes have changed over the years, where maybe 10 or 15 years ago we had this abundance of food. It was all about looking absolutely incredible. There were mountains of everything, and we didn't really think about, you know, well, the most important thing to us at that time was that the person, for want of better words, at the end of the queue had exactly the same experience and the same choice as the person at the front of the queue. But that's not quite really the world that we live in. So some of the things that we've adopted over the recent years is, rather than saying we've run out of something, you know, over a lunchtime or an afternoon or a weekend period, that we've actually sold out of something. So we've tried to switch our language from being sort of a bad news story where we might be pointed at in terms of we haven't done our maths right or something's run out because something's gone wrong behind the scenes, but actually we've changed that to be we've sold out, which is a good news story in terms of it was that good. You know, maybe you should have got here early, or maybe you should have put an order in early. So we've tried to change some of our language that actually, you know, turns it from, you know, a bad news thing to a good news thing, and that's a really positive way of looking at it.
It's a one like unsurmountable problem. You always bang your head against the wall. Think if only somebody in this room, because it's full of people, experts in here. If there's something you wish you could solve with what you do, what would that be?
Well, I think we are getting. I mean, one of the things that has been great is where the data is captured beforehand. So some of the accreditation systems that we are working with, probably more so on some of the bigger productions, whereby, you know, everyone working on that production actually enters in what their food preferences is or what their allergies are. So actually, before we go on site, we've got a much better and clearer picture of who we're actually feeding. So then we are able to make, you know, menu choices ahead of the time. So we're not sort of reliant on day one turning up, you know, and on a 5-day event, we might have kind of nailed it by day 5 in terms of what that audience is eating. So the ability to capture that data ahead of a project and actually know who we're feeding on the day makes a big difference. And we've got a big project that's starting in July, which actually is looking like it could even be a 12-month project. And what we're actually going to be doing there is running a weekly menu rather than a daily menu. Again, what we've always tried really hard to do, and we do, across the globe, in fact, is that every day there's a different menu on. We couldn't possibly think about putting the same menu on 2 days on the trot, or even within a week or so. But what we're adopting now on this project is a weekly menu where there's enough choice, 5 or 6 choices, and maybe some of those menu items can be opened up, that there's options within an item, and getting people to actually pre-order. So we're looking at putting out a menu on a Sunday for the week, and everyone would have the ability through their app to actually pre-order what they'd like, and there's enough choice, they could have something different every day. And we're actually going to make it clear about how many, based off the data that we've captured, is how many of those items were actually going to be available that day. So, if chicken pie is on the menu or whatever, that if you haven't got in early enough, there might not be any available that day. So you just need to get ahead. So this is all about driving our wastage down. So
Information is...
Yeah, but this all needs, it needs, an administration, it needs a budget. This doesn't all just happen by itself. And I think some of these bigger productions or bigger events have the ability that when they are capturing that, accreditation piece, which on most of the big sites we all need to do anyway to physically get ourselves on site, if that could be extended to capture more of what those people we're feeding will eat or want to eat, it means that we can just really start to drive down on our procurement and what we're delivering on the day to actually accommodate everybody and try and get that wastage piece as close to zero as we possibly can.
So is this something you want, or is it?
No, there are
actually started this
there
process.
are some systems out there already, but again, I say they all comes at a cost. Sustainability is not always the cheapest option, unfortunately. So again, these are steps that we are taking. We don't as a company have our own app to do this. That is something we've discussed and talked about. But again, that's a big investment and a big piece. I think the dividends will come through in the long run, but it's a step that, I think it's on our wish list to be able to achieve in the next sort of, 12 to 24 months. But we just need to get some of those productions behind us that will support us and make it part of the fabric of what we do and not an add-on extra,
Adam, what's your wish list?
I think similar to Bonnie, I think the information is really crucial for us. I think, and it's not just about pushing for carbon labelling on drinks. I think it's about engaging with drinks companies to really have the ability to be able to engage with their audience, particularly at live music events and sports events, and really to be able to bring forward the message and understand. If you go to any sandwich shop or supermarket, there's a huge amount of information that's available on that product, and you'll see a lot of people spending a lot of time before they make an informed choice about what sandwich they buy or what drink they buy and so forth. You don't get that in the live music world, and I think that with so many more drinks brands getting involved with sports events, festivals and so forth, I think there's a real missed opportunity for them to really be able to talk to their customers to say, look, hey, this pint of beer you're drinking or this glass of wine you're drinking actually is sourced from 20 miles up the road, and this is our brewing process, and this is how sustainable the company is being, and you're seeing that in a lot of above the line advertising and media and so forth, but that doesn't seem to be coming through in the live music world, and I think that is a really important thing. And I think, again, just to be able to give people an informed choice, to be able to give them a bit more information. It's a bit tricky sometimes at music events or sports events where you've got a very finite window to serve somebody a drink or some food, but there are ways that you can get around that. There are apps that you can use that includes that information. At BST across the road, we use these huge totem poles, which has got all of the menus. So even before you get to the bar, there's a huge amount of information that you can put on these big things, so that the customers can actually understand and research about the product before they buy it. And so for me, I think it's about being more transparent with that information and giving the customer that information. And if they choose to use it, then they use it. If they don't, they don't.
So yeah, more information. But could it not be a point where only you, as the retailer, would only sell the stuff that should be sustainable? Or do you have to work, because it's a business and you have to have a choice?
Yeah, it's a lovely concept to be in and to have the complete freedom to choose your own supplies, absolutely carte blanche. But unfortunately, the reality is that there are commercial rights holders that get involved with these events that we don't necessarily have control or influence over. Now, some of our events we help to inform them, in terms of the sponsors and the partners that they choose, and that can be, more and more that we're seeing as part of commercial conversations and partnership conversations. Sustainability is becoming a big part of that. So it's not just about the big check. It's about, as part of the tender process, they need to prove that they're a sustainable partner to the event. But ultimately, there is that balance, and I think where we've got the independent choice to be able to provide our own products, then we will prefer those where we can. But again, you then come the challenge around scale. When you're trying to work with smaller businesses that don't have the scale to be able to do those large events, it does become a challenge. So I think it's a balance, really. It's about trying to ensure that the big drinks businesses also get on board as well.
So we're in a gap, aren't we, like between where we want to be and where we actually are?
Yeah.
And to make that jump, the small companies have to somehow scale up, but that's difficult as well, isn't it? So
yeah, I think that the more companies that can be transparent about the process that they use and the carbon footprint, I think the more and more the larger drinks businesses will start taking note, and they'll start thinking, well, we need to do this as well. And as I say, it only takes one of them to really come out, one of the big five to come out and say, look, here's our manifesto. These are all the products that we produce. This is how they're sourced. And of course, it's a bit more difficult for global businesses that produce the products in various different countries. And of course, producing a pint of Heineken in Amsterdam is very different to producing it somewhere else. But I think they also have a huge amount of resource and budgets to be able to do these things. So I think if somebody can really make that leap forward, it will change very quickly.
And it's the same with you as well. When we talk about before, like trying to get the information to people.
Yeah.
Is this like an information war in a sense, or is it, or are there other problems as well that you like to sort of find solutions for, but you can't work out what the solution is?
Yeah, I think sustainability as a topic, it often just gets overlooked. It has taste is first. Often with in the industry, and a lot of the other peripheral things and components, nutrition, the sustainable profile of specific dishes is an afterthought when it comes to a lot of convenience that we're finding. And I think we've done a lot of work in the cafe side where we look at certain equipment that could help us with vacuum packing things, so blast chillers, etc. The portioning of foods and how we manage our labor, plate sizes, things like that to try and make the service more sustainable. I think trying to take the customer, the audience, consumer on the journey with you in a way that you can gamify the experience. An event side, a lot of it is about the experience. How do we find ways of gamifying the sustainable approach? And as Buddy mentioned, it trying to weave it into the fabric of your DNA, not this thing on the side that you do when it's convenient. It's harder for some, easier for others, depending on the nature of the company. But I think you see examples of kinetic panels on like dance floors that can power specific kitchen equipment or other things, or partly power certain things. There's many examples it's about getting creative, I think. Yeah.
For you, what would be the ideal endpoint? You think, wow, this is actually working.
I think the level of acceptance of, okay, I have the options and I'm educated enough to make specific choices as and when it suits me. So most people be educated to a point where they understand the sustainable impact, understand the nutritional impact of their choices in a way where their offering is accessible and convenient. I think, if I'm honest, convenience is one of the big drivers of how people eat and what they choose to eat as part of their diet. If they don't have access to something, they take the next best thing. So really pushing the more sustainable options, closer to the consumer, closer to the audience.
Sustainable convenience.
Yes. So I think that the end point for us in terms of food service is really making sure we're pulling the most sustainable choice there. We're menu engineering so that it's easier. I mean, buffet lines do it where, you know, the more premium option is, you know, there's a chef making it. It's a little bit of a slower rollout as opposed to what's on the buffet being really the cheaper option, but really flipping it on its head and making sure it's the more sustainable option. And often that isn't the cheapest option, but really being able to make that trade-off, I think is really key.
So sustainable convenience, Dale, is something you've actually more than dabbled in, isn't it? Yeah.
Sustainable convenience, yeah. Look, I think, you know, we can worry too much about choice, actually. You know, I go to a football club every now and then and they don't serve chips, and I think, part of me thinks that's a breach of my human rights, right? but I get...
Chips are vegan too, aren't they?
The chips are vegan, but I get over that. And I think we can worry and obsess about giving choice, and we can hide behind it as well and not make the, you know, the bold decisions we need to make, because we've got the facts, right? We know that animal agriculture is driving the climate crisis and the human health crisis and the global wildlife crisis. We know this. So it doesn't matter how you dress this up as choice, accessibility, information, or all of that kind of stuff. We, any of us that are responsible for catering, should take that responsibility and start to make choices of our own in terms of what we offer. That's what I think. Also, carbon footprint of food and locality, that gets a lot of airtime. And it's nice to buy things locally, but 1% of the carbon footprint of food comes from food miles. What we eat, what that food is where the bulk of the carbon comes from. And that's meat and dairy. And we have to. Ultimately, the end game, we have to stop intensive animal farming, which means, you know, probably 95% stop eating meat, stop eating animals. That's what we have to do, because we're eating the planet.
Yeah, so you would say, actually, instead of like baby steps, force the hand.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, there'll be differences in every industry, at every event, but I'm just saying, big picture, we have the information. We know that intensive animal agriculture has only been with us 50, 60 years, and if you look at our diets, the increase in the amount of animal products on a graph would go like this. The increase in human health problems, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, that kind of stuff, that tracks the same thing, and the wildlife decline in our country goes the other way, down like that, and it's because we're taking land from nature to grow plants, to feed animals, to get less back, 10 times more into a cow than we get back out. And if we were all plant-based, then 75% of all of the farmland in our country and globally actually could be given back to nature, and we'd live longer, happier, healthier lives. And we wouldn't be abusing something like 80 billion animals a year on the planet through this factory farming system. There's so many wrong things. We know all of these facts, but I think the camera in the room is a term that kind of addresses this. I've been around protesters, Just Stop Oil people, for example, Greenpeace and stuff like that, you know, and they go to incredible lengths to protest the climate crisis, for example, and then go off and eat a steak, you know, and I've seen that, and I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? They say, well, we could eat animals as long as it's like better quality meat, they have a better quality life, you know, and there's a cognitive dissonance in our world. We actually know that we shouldn't be doing this, but we don't want to admit it.
So for you, the vegan thing is actually the front line, isn't it? The deal breaker.
I think it's the, you know, of the three, energy, transport, and food, energy, the transition is well underway. We're at 50% green energy on the grid, and by 2030, Labour says we'll get to 100%. I think that's tough, but we'll get close. The electrification of transport is well underway. Cars are taking over the road, buses are on the road, HGVs are coming, and actually electric flying is coming as well. And then food really is the last big issue. You know, our governments suffer the same problem, the camera in the room. They don't want to give us food advice. The science is clear, the medical science is clear, the medical profession are clear. We should eat less meat and dairy, but our government are afraid to say so. And you know, a lot of people are afraid to say so.
Mm. So it's more about, I don't think you can rely on the government, it's more about just making these things happen yourself, isn't it?
Well, look,
like you do, like you've been doing.
Look, I think there are three major players, right? Governments have the big levers. They have the levers of regulation, of taxes and subsidies, and they create the economic playing field. Then you've got businesses, right? Businesses are all interested in what we want to buy, and they react very quickly, like Greggs did. They put on a vegan sausage roll, it went crazy, and so they put on a lot of other vegan options. They felt that very quickly. And then there's us, because ultimately we do all the buying. They all want our attention. Government wants our votes, business wants our money, and if we stop buying the bad stuff, they have to stop making it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got time for a couple of questions from the floor. Where's the mic? Who's got the mic? There's a mic coming, just, yeah. It's just behind you now. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Phoenix from the Climate Emergency Centre Network. One of the biggest impacts we see at festivals and all sorts of events is plastic, and I wanted to ask you all collectively, or big influencers in the industry, what could we do to replace plastic with things like hemp, which in my book is the #1 climate solution. It's food, fibre, fuel, medicine, and also it biodegrades within about 90 days. So as big influencers, how can we talk a lot about plastic and the problems of it in the oceans, how can we actually start to get hemp put in to replace plastics?
Okay, Bonnie, would you see hemp as being something that would be helpful for what you're trying to do?
I mean, in terms of us as a business, we don't use single-use plastics at all, unless it's specifically requested. We would then, we would challenge that from the outsource. But from what we use, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do use is disposable, but it's all biodegradable. We are at the mercy of a lot of our clients' requests, and we obviously have, what we would like to do and how we'd like to do it, but sometimes our hands are tied. So I think to give options in terms of what we could do and do this sustainable swap piece and just be that encouraging kind of, pivotal conversation piece to have with our clients is a good thing. So absolutely, there's no reason why, going forwards, it can't be part of our, what we can offer going forwards.
Is it easy for you to source for what you're trying to do? Is it one of those great ideas, but how do we do it situations, or do you actually already use?
No, we don't. But absolutely. I think going forwards, we have to be able to offer this.
Chat.
Yeah.
And is that the same with you, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, hemp's a great product. We've actually been working with Nopla, who are the Earthshot Prize winners, actually produce packaging from seaweed, which we work with our food traders to use. So that's a great thing. Similar to Bonnie, we don't use any single-use plastic whatsoever. The only time we would ever use plastic is using rPET, and where we've done a life cycle analysis to prove that the recycling stream can effectively accommodate enough recycling to make it worthwhile. We do use reusable cups in the festival world, but again, it's about reusing them in the right environment. If you're doing a one-day show and people are only there for a matter of hours, using reusable cups actually is not a great solution in terms of the carbon footprint. So it's about choosing the right solution for the right type of event. But products like hemp and seaweed-based products are absolutely coming, and they're here, and the innovation in that space is just incredible, and that can only be a good thing.
Is this something that enters your world?
Yeah, it does, definitely. We don't use hemp exactly, but we have a reusable cup system where we use husky cups made from coffee husk, especially for the coffee provisions, just reusable ware. There have been events such as Paris Olympics where it had the loop system of reusable plastic, but just having the system of charging people for that cup, and when they bring it back, they get that euro back, or they take it home and essentially bought it. So there are systems out there, I think, just more education around what are the alternatives and the pricing components of that. But hemp is definitely on the radar as well, along with many other variations of reusable ware.
Dale?
We don't have single-use plastics either. Obviously, I would have thought, and I'm a fan of hemp and all the alternatives there are. But I think that this is an area where we actually need the government to step in, because it's absurd that it's so cheap to make so much plastic around the world that ends up in the oceans and ultimately in all of our bodies. Our organs have got microplastics in them now because there's so much of this stuff being made. And the external costs of that are not in the product, and that shouldn't be allowed. It's like the price of oil. It would be double what it is today if the external costs of oil were in the product. Same with animal farming. The external costs are not in there. It would cost a lot more if they were, and then the vegan option is absolutely going to be cheaper. So this is a role for government, regulators around the world, to actually make the economic system right.
So basically, yes, politically create the market that favours the right product.
Yeah, we have some absurd economic system at the moment where the actual true cost of something isn't paid. It's subsidised. We subsidise our health system, our environment for fossil fuels and animal farming and plastics. And we shouldn't allow that. Let the people that make that stuff pay the cost of that stuff.
How optimistic are you about any government doing that?
Oh, one day.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
one
know
day.
you have to believe, don't you? Yeah.
No, I do believe. I mean, because it's actually sensible economics as well. You know, and it's the choice that's being made, actually, you know, between the old way of doing things and the new way. And we economically advantage the old way. And if we just switch our attention, subsidies included, from that to this, then we make it much easier for everybody to make the change.
Business driving change.
I would actually say I agree with Dale, and I feel like the issue is compounded because there is just a lot of this misinformation or miseducation on like actually recycling of plastic here as well. So there's a lot of markets that have a more built up or developed system. They still have their issues, but they have developed a culture of actual recycling. And it may not be plastic, it may be glass, it may be tin, but there's a lot of work to do, and it is at a government level that this can change at a impactful level.
Okay, thanks to the panel.